What it is, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the third intermission podcast. This is your boy Dave signing on after a couple weeks off. Of course, you can catch us on the socials at Toronto Third on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Blue Sky. And you can subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast from. That includes Google, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon, and our friends over at Podbean. Uh, Coming up on the ones and twos here is, of course, myself and the right hand of the king himself, aka the Fedora Man, aka Mr. Steal Your Girl, coming to you live from Edmonton, Alberta. Avery McDougal, Avery Wagwan.
Yo, I'm out here chilling, enjoying the last few days of fall before that snow starts flying. Cause I'm seeing those trees starting to turn colors. Like, yo, what do you think you're doing? Nah, stay green.
Exactly. Like out here in Ontario, it's like it's unseasonably crazy out here because it's like it's 20 degrees and it's raining. Like, where do you ever hear that in October? Up here,
In Ontario, that's good question. Good question. It's a great question.
right? I guess this weather's tired of Doug Ford too, so. Anyways, we're out here recording. Hopefully, recording it by the time this episode gets posted. The Jays will hopefully be getting ready for game one of the World Series on Friday. And if not, we'd like to say formally, and ladies and gentlemen, listener discretion is advised, but fuck the city of Seattle and fuck it openly,
Yo, this
especially after,
guy.
especially after game five. So, I mean, for all you true Mariners fans who do believe that, certain incidents weren't intentional. I mean, again, I respect most of y'all, but to those classless idiots who decided that George Springer deserved a baseball in the knee, um, don't walk down dark alleys. That's all I'm gonna say. Um, that's all I'm genuinely gonna say. Just make sure you walk in the muddy system. That's all I'm gonna tell you, because
This guy, yo.
just remember the North remembers that shit. So even though technically you guys are more northern than we are. But listen, fuck you guys. Anyways, we got a great show lined up for you today. Of course, we're going to talk about how the Leafdom are doing right now. Of course, Anthony Stolarz between the pipes, leading the charge as the lead goaltender, as Joseph Wall is still currently out indefinitely. We're going to look at that. We're also going to look at the fact that, say, the Department of Player Stupidity had finally actually got made the right decision on Brad Marchand's classless acts over the last few days. We're going to look into that as well. We're also going to look into the fact that the Mammoth finally have a mascot, and it is the stuff of nightmares. And then, of last but not least, we're going to dive into the latest Vegas signing. And folks, before we dive into that, we're going to give you a bit of a content warning. Well, actually, we're going to give you a pre-content warning. Some of the stuff on this episode does contain very graphic material, and of course, we want to send out like we want to send out like our heartfelt sympathies to victims involved in the situation. So listener discretion is advised. Um, so much more. Um, as we dive into today's episode. So, first things first, let's talk about our favorite hockey team, the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're currently sitting at 3 wins, two two regulation losses, and an overtime loss. At the time of this recording, of course, Anthony Stolarz being the lead goaltender between the pipes right now. As I previously stated earlier, the Leafs had finished up a shutout loss to the Seattle Kraken back on Saturday night. It's kind of a little fitting that the Seattle baseball team, the Toronto baseball team, are currently playing like a like currently in a baseball like currently in the American League Championship Series, and then right in between on a day off, Seattle's NHL team and Toronto's NHL team squares off. That's kind of a very weird concept. Wouldn't you agree, Avery? Like,
Oh, I think it's more of a coincidence, anything else. That you get the same at that same time, Toronto, Seattle. It's pretty funny you get those two teams scoring off for two different sports in similar times. Like that may never happen ever again in
mm,
in two different sports. But Yeah, those Toronto and Seattle, those two teams played off, and Toronto's start in my mind this year, Dave. It's been a little. I would say I'll give it a C grade right now. It's been very up and down. As we saw Toronto lose to Seattle in overtime,
Hmm.
and right now this is a start where if you're a Leafs fan, I don't think you're overly. I mean, you're pleased with the play of Stolarz, but as a collective right now, it's been very average in my mind, Dave. As a collective, as an organization.
Hmm. Obviously the Leafs have had some very, very close calls with with a lot of things over the last little bit. Of course, when the season opener did happen back on the 8th, like the Leafs were wheeling and dealing against Montreal. And of course that little prior home and home set between the Leafs and the Red Wings. Of course, the Red Wings slapping the living hell out of the Leafs, and then the Leafs were, well, almost but not miserably returning the favor back on Thanksgiving. And then, of course, getting themselves two solid wins, big one against the Predators back on the 14th, and then, of course, the Leafs making easy work of the Rangers on Thursday before losing to Seattle. Um, you really have to sit and wonder, like, is this team ready for practically anything and everything at this point? Um, Looking back at everything right now, I mean, given that Stolarz is the only, I guess, the only decent goaltender that the Leafs have right now, other than potentially Hildeby and Primo, although we haven't seen much of Primo all season long. So, I mean, again, jury's still out in the situation, but like, I feel like Toronto just is missing Joseph Wall, and they're missing Joseph Wall in a hurry. You know what I mean?
Mm. I think the big thing is you want to have that good tandem again between Stolarz on Wall to be able to give Stolarz a bit of a break, and of course, hopefully Wall is doing okay right now. We know he's away from the team, but yeah, I think
Hmm.
right now this team is missing that solid tandem you did have in 24, 25.
Hmm.
Because right now we see this league season's been this league start to season's been very win one, lose two, or win two, lose
Yeah.
one. The
Yeah.
consistency has not been there. And the only thing I will say is that early on, at least you can drop points to Western Conference teams. You don't want to start off the year dropping points to teams like Detroit and like the Rangers.
That's true. Because, like, in any given indication, like, say, a lot of people will sit there and say, oh, um, you don't win the season in October. You win the season, like, say, over the course of the year. And, like, of course, if you win those meaningless games in, like, say, January, February, or even December, then it's like it still means something. Let's take a look at the baseball playoffs, for example. Like, the reason that the Jays were first in the American League was because of the fact that those small, meaningless wins in like June or July or April have some very significant difference as to what's going on. Because, like, the Yankees learned that the Blue Jays were, like, those meaningless wins in like April and May against the Yankees really costed the Yankees the division, and it really paid in spades. And a lot of teams are looking at it like, okay, you know what, maybe we should take the season a little more seriously. And like, let's, like, obviously you have your small one-offs like the J season right now, but like, of course, like, other teams are starting to follow suit in different sports, right? Say, for example, in the NBA, like the NBA season's about to start up too. And
Mm.
those small preseason wins could like be big momentum boosters into going into the regular season, especially for the Raptors. So it's like you can't sit there and say like, oh, a meaningless win or like some small win in October doesn't mean squat going into April. It's like, again, if divisional or conference matchups are a thing, like, you really have to look at that and take that 100% seriously at this point.
Yeah, no, of course. And it's funny you mentioned, yeah, it's funny how you mentioned the Yankees and under a long season like that, and one or two wins here or there, and
Hmm.
they would have won the AL East. But you're right. Now, you can't lose a division or a conference this early, but it can impact you in 3 to 4 months, dropping points here and there, especially when it comes to that division that they're in. And again, they're still in a division with the heavy hitters, like you still up against Detroit. You still have Boston, Florida in your division, where I know those are teams that are hurt and banged up, but things can change in a few months. You're still in division with Ottawa, who I still think Ottawa can turn things around. I still think Ottawa has the ability to turn things around, even without Brady Kachuk in the lineup right now. So you can't be sleeping. I mean, yes, you can't determine anything just yet, but you don't want to fall into that mindset of, oh, it's only October, it's only November, because you're gonna want those points back come in March and April.
Exactly. And again, you do not want to sit and wonder, like, okay, should we have played a little bit harder in October? Should we have gotten those, small yet significant wins in November? Because, like, looking at November schedule coming up, like the Leafs have some very heavy hitters coming into the city. Of course, you got the Flames, you've got Pittsburgh, Utah coming in as the Mammoth for the first time. You have the Bruins, of course, that's a very significant matchup, like regardless of whether or not you're a Leafs fan or a Bruins fan. Um, you have Carolina as well, who's always been dominant as well. Los Angeles coming through, St. Louis as well. Connor Bedard and the Blackhawks, who are looking to resurge and potentially become a playoff team this year. Montreal, yeah, you're going to Montreal. You're facing potentially Ovi for quite possibly the last time. And then of course you have Crosby again at the end of the month before December really kicks off. So it's like Toronto has a lot of work in order to, or sorry, has a lot of ground in order to catch up, especially in the division right now. Of course, being third in a division behind not only like the Red Wings and the Montreal Canadiens, like again, although it's still early, like these divisional matchups or in these conference matchups can pay dividends in the long run. And I know Stolarz was very frustrated with how the Leafs have been starting off very slow over the last few days, but sometimes it takes a little bit for a good engine to start running again. And I feel like, what, like if Toronto can find a way to play their game a little bit better than, well, play their game sans Marner, you know, Toronto might be able to pull out the division and see if they can get themselves into a decent position in order to get into round two come April. I don't know, Avery. What do you think?
Oh, you made a good point about November. How right now this is a team where actually, you know what, you mentioned Calgary. Like, heck, that should be it. That should be. I don't want to say. I mean, it's NHL. There's no easy wins, but you mentioned right there a couple of games against Pittsburgh and Calgary. Like those should be games Toronto wins. Those should be quote unquote gimme games. You mentioned right there coming up. Utah should be Utah. You're looking a little better, so that's not a gimme game. But you also have Chicago coming up. The Blackhawks should be a win. That should be 2 points for you as well. So there are
Hmm.
games on the schedule coming up next month that should be at least 1 point games. There are games in November where it's like you can't be skating out of games against Utah, Chicago, Pittsburgh with 0 points. You should not be doing that.
No, I fully agree with that. And to tell you the truth, it's like these gimme games are also like say trap games, and essentially in that situation. So Toronto really has to make sure that they pay attention to how they're playing, what type of style they're playing, and also make sure that they don't falter when it comes to good teams, because it's like you still have, although Crosby is old as shit, he's still a solid player. Same with Malkin. Same with who else is on that roster right now? I mean, geez, like there aren't too many players left that we can name off on the Penguins, is there?
I mean, there are still names, but that Penguins team is right now. Pittsburgh times taping the Penguins sit at 2-4, but that's a roster where they are stuck between again trying to fully rebuild and not fully rebuilding because like
Hmm.
I look at that roster right now. I think to myself, they gotta they're gonna have to eventually. I mean, Eric Carlson's still there. Eric Carlson's still in that roster. So
Hmm.
you have still Carlson. You still have Anthony Mantha. Kevin Hayes is there. So it really is. It's a roster of uh, Matthew Dumba is there now. Caleb Jones is on that roster. It's a weird roster of a mix of a team that's stuck between do we rebuild or do we have give it one last go? But really, I don't think right now, to me, the horses are not there to
Yeah.
be any more than a one round and out team in my mind.
Hmm. And like, if this is, say, the last ride for Crosby, then it's like, okay, do we make a playoff push, or do we decide, you know what, like let Crosby ride off into the sunset and play on a contender? Similar to a Ginla back in his heyday. That's something that the Leafs are going, or sorry, let me rephrase that. That's something the Penguins are going to have to figure out. But this is kind of not the time or the place to figure out like whether the Penguins are going to figure their stuff out. This is more of a Leafs conversation at this point. So ideally speaking, right now, uh, Toronto does have some work to do in order to be able to get themselves as the contender they should be. Um, you have a chance to knock off Florida, who's extremely tired because they've been in three straight Stanley Cup finals. And it's like you got to strike while the iron's hot in this situation. Uh, you also have a Boston team that's practically getting ready to flatline at a moment's notice. Um, you have young up and comers like say Ottawa and Buffalo as well. And if you don't take advantage of that, like what do you have in this situation? And then you also have a very aging core in Morgan Riley and John Tavares as well. And it's like these guys are just coming into the twilight of their career. Matthew Nyes, of course, looking to be the face of the franchise, along with, say, Austin Matthews, who's practically one of the best players in the world. But if Toronto wastes that all that talent and doesn't make it to at least a conference final or a Stanley Cup final within like the next 2 3 years, I feel like this might have been a very giant missed opportunity for Toronto. And Toronto really needs to reevaluate whether or not they want to keep these guys or, essentially just say, you know what, like we're done with this experiment. Let's just rebuild. Because again, Toronto has not won a Stanley Cup in 58 years. And, it's starting to get a little more, it's starting to become like the Chicago Cubs. We're in this situation where it's like the Leafs aren't the lovable losers of the league, where it's like, they get a chance to, have a chance at making a championship final only to falter. Like the Leafs have been abysmal since 1967, and they've only had like four, maybe five solid shots since then. Of course, we all know what happened in '93 and in '94. You just ran into a powerhouse or sorry, a juggernaut of a Vancouver Canucks team. 2002 was your best shot, and then just after that, it was just like it's been either first round, your occasional second round there, and you've been beat by Florida on so many occasions that it's like it's just kind of redundant now. So like Toronto really has to find a way to break through and get through to a conference final or a Stanley Cup final. Otherwise, like it feels like you may have just wasted Austin Matthews' best years in Toronto, um, and you might have just ran down John Tavares, who should still be the captain of the Leafs right now, considering the amount of selflessness he's done for this team. And you still need that veteran leadership. I don't know if Nylander stays at this point, but like I feel like that's a conversation for a later day.
Well, it's clear those guys, Matthews and Nylander, they still want to be elite police. They've never given any indication that they want to leave Toronto, that they want to go somewhere else. And even like just seeing how they conduct themselves, they want to win in Toronto. They want to be Maple Leafs. That's a really good sign. And if you're Brad Living, you keep those two as your core pieces as long as possible, I believe, in my mind.
Mhm. And I think that's a very significant thing to say, but like at the same point in time, like I keep saying, you have to strike while the iron is hot in this situation. If Toronto screws this up, I feel like it is going to be a very long time before we even get like a decent generational player like that ever again, or generational players like that ever again. Because like Nylander's has been solid over his tenure as a Leaf. Morgan Riley is starting to come into his own. John Tavares, of course, hometown boy, basically giving the Islanders the middle finger, and the Islanders have been giving him one right back. But at least he gets to torch them in the same way. And then of course Austin Matthews winning the Hart Trophy as a Maple Leaf. I feel like the first time in almost 60 years. Like, or sorry, almost 70 years. Like it's still something. It's still something to be a Maple Leaf, but again, you have to go like you have only a limited window. I mean, look, let's take your Oilers for example.
Mm.
Connor McDavid signing a 2-year extension with the Oilers, and he's been to the Cup twice and hasn't won one. But I feel like this is kind of like this is McDavid saying like, listen, either win or I'm gone. And I kind of have to agree with that sentiment. It's like either win or I'm basically leaving for greener pastures somewhere else. Like obviously I know for a fact that like he hasn't come out and say it, but the writing's kind of he hasn't come out and said it, but the writing is practically on the wall at this point. Like what Edmonton has been to the Cup final twice and has only won five out of a possible 14 games. And they've had opportunities to actually win the Cup. And unfortunately, the job hasn't been finished because Florida is either too damn good or Florida just cheats. But in this particular situation, Edmonton hasn't gotten the job done. And it's very sad to say that like you may or may not have Connor McDavid for much longer. And I
Well,
think Toronto might be in that same position.
Well, we'll see because when it comes to both McDavid in Edmonton or guys like Matthews in Toronto and Nylander in Toronto, neither of these guys have said in terms of leaving or wanting to go somewhere else. I think that's the big thing is that waiting until they say it themselves because that's the one thing is that I mean, great example of speculation that went crazy or went haywire was last year with Leon Draisaitl. How
Mhm.
people tried to say, "Oh, Leon's leaving. He wants to go to Boston. Wants to go to San Jose." And then the man just signed 8-year extension. Like that's the
Yeah.
one thing where, so, I mean, don't get me wrong, there can be some validity to some speculation, but sometimes it gets so far out of control and
Mhm.
so incorrect. I think to myself, wait a minute, hold on. And that's why I admit it is tough to be an insider. But some of the opinions that come out from some of these guys wanting to leave can
Mhm.
be so silly. I do believe
No, I fully agree with that. It's just, again, like sometimes you have to read between the lines in certain situations.
they're not
This is one
wrong.
of those situations.
Yeah, and I do agree though that if the contract and Connor leaving money on the table to basically tell management, I left money on the table, go and get some more help. It is a message saying, hey, I want to win sooner than later, and I agree because again, you go to a cup final 2 years in a row, you go once to game 7, you go to game 6, you think to yourself, hey, we are, and again, when you get back to a cup final as a pro athlete, winning is the most important thing, and you don't want to fall, you don't want to regress, you don't want to go back to not making it that far and losing again. So yeah, so I do think the writing is there and since hey, we gotta win sooner than later. So
Exactly. So, of course, I do agree with Stolarz saying that, at least haven't been playing well. And, it's always been like a kind of like a start, stop type of situation. Because it's like what you have 3 wins in 6 games. You play, hold on, let me see here. If you just look at the schedule coming up right now, of course, you have New Jersey on Tuesday. You're in Buffalo on Friday, which is potential game 1 of the World Series in Toronto. Then you have a back to back, and then you have the Sabres here in Toronto on Saturday, which will potentially be game 2 of the World Series. Folks, you know where I'm going with this. Uh, and then, of course, you have the Flames October 28th. You have a back to back with Columbus after the Flames on the 29th. And then of course you have the Flyers on November 1st, which is game 7 of the World Series in Toronto. Folks, you genuinely know where I'm going with this. But at the same point in time, like hopefully the city hasn't burned down thanks to Vibes Cartel. But we shall see how things go from there.
That we will. And
Go
like
ahead.
like like I said before on this show, yo, don't be out here boxing people up for the vibes tickets. Be orderly. Be, be well mannered. We don't need violence. You're trying to get those tickets in these streets. We mentioned the anti-Stolarz comments, Dave, and that's if you're a Leafs fan, you gotta appreciate your goaltender talking like that. Like that is leadership. That is a goalie who wants better for this team. And I think Stolar's a guy where you look back on things, and this Leafs team can go out and win a couple of rounds, have a deep run. People are gonna look back on Stolar's comments, the wake up call for his organization, I do believe.
Mhm. Like looking at these comments right now, it's like, yes, it's very nice for someone to finally sit there and say, you know what, like, hey, we're not playing how we should be playing. And this needs to be taken very seriously. Like, I'm like, if I'm like your mild mannered Toronto Maple Leafs fan looking at the situation, it's like, okay, finally, somebody's taking some ownership in this situation. You know, like those are the small types of things where I can look at it and say, like, this team is actually committed to winning. And, obviously, talk is cheap in this situation. Talk is cheap, action is expensive in this situation. And, Toronto really hasn't put their money where their mouth is, especially over the last few years. Um, but again, it's still only 6 games in. You have what 76 games left to try and right the ship and make sure that you get yourself in a decent playoff position so that you can finally silence your critics and say, hey, you know what, we're a decent hockey team. Like guys like Stolarz out here are saying the right things. And he did state the potential's here. We have the skill, we have the grit, we have the grind. It's just frustrating that we can't put it together right now. Completely understandable. And it makes a lot of sense. Like he's saying the exact sentiments that most Leaf fans are saying right now. It's like you have everything to put it together. Why are we not doing it is the question. And I feel like it's a psychological thing at this point. Um, of course, you know, you got to do what you got to do, and you got to find a way to just mentally get past it and start moving forward. And if the Leafs can do that, they should be fine. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, they should be fine. And again, like I said, we've all said this. This is a long season. We're in, we're in the first month of the NHL season. There's over 65 games to go. Things can things can still turn around for the organization. Again, it's 3-2-1. We're not talking about this team right here being 10 points back of a playoff spot in the middle of March or April.
Of course. And it's not like Edmonton was a couple years ago where they were like second to last in the league. And next thing you know, that resurgence gets them to the Stanley Cup, for a one win away from an actual Stanley Cup for like the first time since 1990. You know, like, is it going to be that type of situation? Who knows? Because like sport is very, very twisted like that. And life sometimes imitates art. So you never know what can happen. Hopefully the Leafs can figure it out. And if we start seeing more comments from Stolarz about how we're playing and everything, then like there is potential cause for concern when it comes to the Leafs potentially hitting the panic button in this situation. But I don't think we should be hitting the panic button just yet, or even opening that lid, because again, only 6 games into the season. Yeah, it's a little frustrating right now, but again, the opportunity for the Leafs to strike is there, and we can like again they can figure it out. So we should be fine. All right, moving on real quick here. We are going to look at the Flores situation. Um, of course, as we like to affectionately dub the Department of Player Stupidity. Um, there are only certain cases where every every broken clock is right twice a day. In this particular situation, it looks like the clock has I guess we found the right time on this broken clock, especially when it comes to the Florida Panthers. Of course, over the last couple days, we have learned that Brad Marchand has been fined the maximum allowable fine for unsportsmanlike conduct during the game against Buffalo. Brad Marchand has been punished by the Department of Player Safety. Avery, I'm going to let you discuss this one since I have not actually seen this myself. So go ahead.
Yeah, it's funny how, for once, that's the Department of Player Safety does something that people around the league are happy about because Brad Marchand, if those who missed it in the game against Buffalo, there was an altercation where I saw something I'd never seen before. Well, I've seen before but not in an NHL game, where he took Rasmus Dahlin's helmet to the penalty box and ripped off the straps. Now, I've seen players grab opposing players' jerseys and rip it, or throw their gear into the stands. And before that, Marchand and Dahlin had a brawl that resulted in Marchand being jumped, and I wouldn't think it was a brawl. It was really Marchand losing his cool on Dahlin and just teeing off on Rasmus Dahlin. So we saw Marchand cross-checking Dahlin. Sorry, Dahlin cross-checking Marchand, my bad. And Marchand getting back at Dahlin for that. But it wasn't really a fight. It was just Marchand on Dahlin, jumping him after being cross-checked. But Marchand taking his helmet and pulling the straps off. That should have been in the moment a clear game misconduct. You
Mhm.
cannot, you cannot, you cannot start destroying opposing teams' gear. That should have been game misconduct. And
Yeah.
it's good to see the league punishing Marchand for that because that's childish. That is childish to keep his helmet and then start tearing out the straps. Like, what are you accomplishing by doing that? What are you doing here, Brad? Come on now.
No, that's just stupid on his part. And you know what? Like, I mean, it's a rat being a rat in that situation, but like eventually, like that stuff's gonna try and catch up to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and I'm glad that it wasn't. Yeah, I'm glad that it was actually he. I mean, yes, it's only $5,000, but it's the league clearly saying, you know what? At a certain point, the league has to act. You can't have an opposing player tear up an opposition player's gear. That can't be allowed. And I'm glad the league did something. But I know it's an agreed upon thing in CBA, but $5,000, that is so low for a guy who, to Brad Marchand and to all these guys of his caliber, $5,000 is pocket change. I know, it's in the CBA, but 5G is nothing to Brad Marchand.
No, that's true. And I mean, again, considering the average annual value of any given contract by any NHL player, regardless of how much money you're making, it's like 750,000 a year. Still, like, why are we finding guys like just 5K for something that stupid? You know what I mean? Like if this were the NBA, like say you get like a maximum, like say 50 to 100K fine in that situation. Same with baseball, same with football, you know? Why is it that hockey only finds somebody like $5,000 for something that stupid?
Yeah.
It's beyond me.
I know, and it goes to a broader discussion when it comes to hockey revenue and where hockey is compared to the other three sports in the major North American leagues.
Mhm.
But still, that is you roll your eyes at that because Brad Marchand, that is he can write a check for 5 grand just like that. That's nothing to him.
All right. So again, that's a very iffy situation to look into. But you know what? Like getting back on point here, um, I'm kind of glad somebody finally saw that, somebody finally said, you know what, hey, your antics are being stupid. Doesn't matter if you're on Florida or wherever, right? Like you do deserve to be punished for your stupidity. So, congratulations to the Department of Player Stupidity for finally getting it right once out every, say, 500 infractions. So,
Yeah, and the thing is too is Dave is that you can't even hide that because they caught you in 8K. You're in 8K in the penalty box ripping up Rasmus Dahlin's helmet. Like you caught you in not in 12K. Like that you can't hide that action, Brad.
right, exactly. Like you can't really do something that's stupid and expect not to get caught. You know what I mean? So, I don't know, man. That's some wild stuff in this situation.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully the Department of Player Stupidity gets it right again. And, maybe we could actually look at them as maybe a respectable department in the National Hockey League. But, you know, of course, a circus can only have so many idiots in that situation. So we'll keep an eye on that and we'll go from there. Moving forward, we are looking into the stuff of nightmares. I mean, Halloween is just like a couple weeks away, and of course, the Mammoth have decided to partake in that by introducing Tusky as their new mascot. I've seen, I saw a video clip of Tusky coming out, and I have to say, like, if I'm a Mammoth fan and I'm under the age of 6, I do not want to be around him as much as possible. I'm sorry, that face is frightening, extremely frightening. Like if you could make him look like that one character from Ice Age, then like that's absolutely fine. But like that Tusk is fucking just wild, man.
And for those who don't know, the Utah Mammoth unveiled their new mascot, which is a mammoth. Surprise, surprise. As
Yeah,
Dave mentioned, his name is Tusky, and he's literally drawn in petite colors. His fur, he's 6'5". He's got light blue fur, dark blue mohawk. I don't know why he needs a mohawk, but okay. White
right.
tusks, and yeah, that's the one thing is that he, like so many animal logos in sports, he himself has an angry demeanor. He's got a scowl on his face. And I don't know. I don't know. I'm just, first of all, Tusky is a lame, like, come on, hockey. First of all, can we stop with the nicknames only being adding a K and a Y in somebody's name? Come on. I'm so over the blandness of hockey, even for the mascots. But
Right.
no, something about Tusky is, I don't know. Something about it is like they're trying way too hard to make him look aggressive, but it's like
No, I agree.
nah,
I
nah,
fully
dude.
agree. It's so bad because it's like you had the potential to do so much better, and it's just like, let me put it this way. It's like you're driving on a road and there's black ice and you could steer into the black ice. And instead you decided to steer into the pool of stupidity. And unfortunately now it's like you're wrapped around that pole and you cannot escape in this situation. It is that bad.
I and maybe it's because of the images I'm seeing first of all, but this is the kind of mascot where you can't have a super skinny person portraying them. It looks weird for
It
some
looks
reason.
very weird. Like you had such an opportunity to do better in this situation, and you chose not to. And now look at it. It's just terrible. Like I mean, look at the Jays mascot, Ace. Like,
Yes.
that was actually clever, you know? I don't know what happened to his girlfriend. Like maybe they got rid of her due to budget cuts, but it's like like you remember back in the day, like there used to be two Jace
I
mascots,
do,
guy and a
yes.
girl. Like I don't know what
Hmm.
happened to Diamond. Like did Diamond did Ace and Diamond break up and have a very nasty divorce? Like what's going on
Yo, yo, Diamond's dating Mr. Met now.
here? Right? But like I mean, you have the Raptor, which obviously makes sense, right? Considering the Raptors are the Toronto Raptors, but like the Raptor is actually like a I guess an ergonomically designed mascot, dead ass. And then of course you have Carlton. You have Carlton, the anthropomorphic polar bear for
Yes.
a mascot for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And then you have Duke. You have Duke, the like Duke the Hound for the Marlins. Like that's something that's creative at least. You know, there's some sense of creativity there. Like I mean, TFC doesn't have a mascot, but TFC doesn't need one, considering the fact that they have an actual hawk out there just flying around an exhibition place, pecking off all the seagulls. But the lack of creativity, the lack of mental seasoning in this situation is just bad, especially for the Mammoth. And it's just like you had such a great opportunity to have a decent mascot, or at least have a decent looking mascot with a suit that actually fits. And instead, you have this. You have Tusky. Why?
Like,
Ah,
you know what? I wouldn't. If the Mammoth did what I said they should have done years ago, or not years ago, but last year, and if this team went full Utah Jazz, considering they're owned by the Smith family, and
mhm.
when we're purple and white, if Tusky came out as a purple Mammoth, it would have been absurd, but at least would have I would have been thought that would have been funnier because hey, why is Mammoth purple? Oh yeah, it's owned by the Utah Jazz ownership. At least it would have looked, but it would have looked outrageous, but I would have enjoyed that more than what Tusky is right now.
Exactly. I don't know, man. Like, whoever is in marketing for the Mammoth right now really needs to be punched in the throat.
Oh jeez.
Like, whoever makes these decisions like really needs to sit and think and be a little more creative with certain things because it's like, oh, Tusky is the easiest name to come up with. I'm like, I'm sorry, you could have called your mammoth like Blizzard or or something like that, or you literally could have called him Snowflake, and it would have actually like made more sense. And I'm not saying that to be rude or anything, or you could have called him Rocky. Or you could have called him Stone, like Stone the Mammoth.
I mean, anything but Tusky, because there's no that's a name
That
you come up with in 15 seconds.
right? That's like that's like 6 months of like planning only to come up with two names for a pigeon in New York City. It's like you want to call him Petey or Polly, like that's the stupid and it's like again, no slander to New York except for the Yankees, but like I'm sorry, like you have great opportunities and you went with that. You genuinely went with that? Like, no, dude, what's wrong with you here?
Yeah, I don't get it. I understand that. You're right there, Dave. It takes months and months to come up with a mascot and planning and naming, but come on, we could have done
Do
better there.
better.
We could
That's
have
all
done
I'm saying.
better.
Do better. Like, tell me exactly where I'm wrong. Do better in this situation. You know what I mean?
Right?
Jeez, you know, it's stories like this that make me wish that I was a hockey executive and I could come up with a better name and be like, oh well, I don't know, we don't need you to name our mascot Jamal or anything. It's like, nah, I'm not gonna name our mascot Jamal, especially with your racist ass. But like what,
Jamal's wild.
right? Call the mascot Tyrone.
All right. Jeez. Yo, I don't know if an NHL team comes out with a mascot named Tyrone, I'm
Yo,
howling.
I'm dying yesterday. Yo, imagine if the Flames came up with the instead of Husky, they
Oh
change their
no.
mascot from a Husky to like a black stallion and call it Tyrone.
Oh, no, no. Even the Blasty mascot, they could have bring if they could have had, instead of remaking Harvey the Hound, they could have a Blasty mascot and they just put, naming the Blasty mascot Tyrone is ridiculous to me.
That's crazy. Oh, jeez. Oh man. We really gotta stop. We really gotta stop going off the deep end on these things, or just keep going at this point. Like I
Grief.
mean, I might just steer into the pool myself at this point. But it is what it is. All right, folks. We're gonna take a little bit of a darker turn, no pun intended, in this situation. But of course, the next thing that we're going to talk about, and we're actually going to end the episode off on, it does have a very, very mature theme to it, and it is a very graphic story. So, folks, discretion is advised. Um, so recently, the Vegas Golden Knights have decided to sign one of the five from the Hockey Canada incident back in 2018 after its findings. Of course, those five players were acquitted were not found guilty based off of the evidence due to the court's findings, and they were acquitted of all charges. However, the hockey world has been lit ablaze by this whole situation, as these five players were, although they were deemed not guilty in that situation, um, it has raised some speculation as to whether or not they should still have jobs in the sport, let alone be allowed to even touch the sport ever again. And this has taken a very sinister turn in this situation, depending on how you look at it. But of course, one of the accused, Carter Hart, former Flyers goaltender, has been signed to a deal with the Vegas Golden Knights. And this has been subject to heavy backlash, not only online, but also within other hockey spheres as well. And just looking at it from a personal standpoint right now, like none of those five, although they were found not guilty, like I don't believe that these five players should be actually playing hockey in this situation. You know, like especially with the graphic nature of the court case and everything, and considering that some of the evidence had either been, say, misplaced or say eliminated from certain things, and given the public knowledge of the case, it's like these guys should not be allowed to lace up a pair of skates, let alone have the ability to play hockey in the NHL. And, of course, we were following that case very, very extensively, to the point where it was like, well, we didn't feel we were in the courtroom, but we felt that, that it was a very, very significant thing to keep an eye on, especially now that, say, most sponsors have decided to pull out from Hockey Canada and any various tournaments until, like, say, there's I guess, some significant change within Hockey Canada and its practices. But at this rate, it still creates another black eye for hockey culture. And Avery, I kind of want to hear your thoughts on this now that, like, say, this has come to light. I mean, you saw the backlash online over the past weekend, and like it was not pretty for Vegas whatsoever.
No, not at all. That organization on social media faced a rightfully deserved ratio online, as we saw immediately the backlash come out to the signing of Carter Hart to the PTO and the statement of Vegas. That the statement out there was rightfully scrutinized, where they put out where one of the points was, we remain committed to the core values that have defined the organization from its inception, and expect our players will continue to meet those standards moving forward. I look at the core values, and the NHL themselves the league themselves, Dave, had said that the events were deeply troubling and unacceptable. And yes, the league has reinstated all five players. I know Michael McLeod just signed in the KHL, but the league themselves said that the events were deeply troubling and unacceptable. Reading what has come out from that trial, players who have to, even though Canadian law said they are not guilty, I do not want players on a roster who had
Hmm.
to get stories straight. Players agreed to get a story straight in terms of what happened in that hotel room with EM. Players who are innocent, players who are of sound character, do not have to shoot a video with EM asking for consent or saying, do you consent? Players who are innocent do not put themselves in that spot where they're worried about if consent happened, if everything was on the level, if
Hmm.
everything that happened in that hotel room was on the up and up in a sexual nature. Players
Hmm.
of strong character do not do that. You should not have an NHL putting out a statement saying the events were deeply troubling and unacceptable. So I don't know what the hell the Golden Knights think core values are. And also, too, Dave, Kelly McCrimmon was not in that locker room. If you are going to sign Carter Hart, if you're going to sign Carter Hart, you better damn well be in the locker room facing the media explaining on that day why you signed him.
No, I fully agree with that. And this is why hockey culture really needs a massive reset at this point. It's a shame that we have to run into these situations again. And you know what? Like, I don't understand why. I don't understand how, but It is absolutely insane that we still have to have this conversation in this day and age where, in situations like this, players who do negative stuff or players who do like say some very heinous kind of like what they did to EM and still have a job in still have a job in the industry. Like I kind of feel that that's just a massive like slap in the face, not only to fans who want to continue to follow the sport, but also at the same time, like, sets a very bad precedent for younger players as well. And it really tells them like, oh, okay, like even though like say like and no one is above the law, like just because you're a hockey player doesn't mean like it means that like you can practically get away with anything if you have a good lawyer. And it's just that's what makes it so. And that's the unfortunate reality of the situation, flat out.
And my thing is too, this Dave, is people act as if playing hockey is a God-given right. I
It
mean,
isn't.
okay, you know what? Okay, we've had our thoughts on this,
Hmm.
but the NHL and their teams are private entities. They don't
Hmm.
have to sign anybody to a contract, and it would have been a major statement if all these teams said no, we do not want your services because one, again, he hasn't played in a year, and two,
Hmm.
we do not feel your character is of what we need in this locker room. And I wish that happened because that would have actually shown, to me at least, that hey, you cannot conduct yourself any which way and still expect this sport to have your back, which it shouldn't have in that aspect. One of the more vile things I saw online was Jakub Voracek. There was a fan who a couple nights ago was on in Vegas at T-Mobile Arena, had a sign protesting signing Carter Hart,
Hmm.
and one of the lines on her sign was "Believe all women." And Jakub Voracek, the former Flyer, tweeted out, "Oh, believe all women." And it's like, see, that's the kind of nonsense where it makes me shake my head because there are still those players, retired players, other players in hockey, people in hockey,
Hmm.
who have been banging the drum of this. Oh, she lied. She's out for money. And that's what I hate is that people are in that aspect. Certain, not all, but certain
Hmm.
people in hockey immediately want to jump to lying, cash grab. She's a this and that. She wants to bring hockey players down. Well, no. Again, these are guys who are junior hockey. Yet to make their NHL debut. Yes, on Team
Hmm.
Canada's junior team, but these were not NHL. These were not people like to trumpet up on this idea of. And the problem is that there's so many people who think like that still that it hurts this culture from ever changing when people still think like that. But
Hmm.
to that aspect, Jakob, shut the seriously. You're talking out. Stay out of it.
I want to point out something right now. In this particular situation, normally I would be the angry one. The fact that Avery is angrier than me right now is a very scary thing in this situation. It's like, let me put it this way. Hearing Avery swear is like someone kicking a puppy off the top of the CN Tower and being is not bad in this situation. And I'm actually genuinely frightened right now with the fact that like Avery's cussing that hard.
I'm just tired of people who want to push that narrative or that garbage narrative who don't who think women are out to get these guys and oh it's they're trying to bring these guys down and whatever.
Like again, you can be not guilty and still be
Not be innocent.
exactly. Unfortunately, the stupidity behind this whole situation is that ideally speaking, it's insane for us to even have this conversation. And I hate the fact that we're still talking about this to this day. Um, Ideally speaking, right now, like again, these five players should not have a job in hockey at all. If they go to the KHL, fine. That's kind of their prerogative. Go play in Russia, go have a career in Russia, and what have you. Stay as far away from Canadian hockey as much as possible. Also, stay as far away from the NHL as much as possible. You do not deserve to be here. The fact that one of these five trash bags gets to have an opportunity to, potentially play for the Stanley Cup in this situation, especially after what's happened.
Mhm.
It's just a massive slap in the face. And I for one, am not okay. Like we've all been teenagers at one point or another. We've all done stupid things, but like to do incriminatingly stupid stuff like that and then expect to have a job right after is what the is wrong with this whole situation right here. And you know what? Like I don't really I don't really want to sit here and glorify the fact that a bunch of boys who felt that, oh, taking advantage of a girl is one of the crazy like to think that's like a smart idea in this day and age is really what is wrong with hockey culture in general. And you
Yeah.
know, it really needs to be like eviscerated flat out.
And one of my last points here before we wrap things up here, Dave, is Carter Hart talked in the locker room. Carter Hart, he stated how he's learned a lot, he's grown a lot, he's ready to move on. Oh, good, Carter. Good. I'm glad you're ready to move on. How about EM? Can she move on as she has to relive what happened every day? Is she ready to move on? That whole idea of, oh, I'm ready to move on. Like it was a bad trade in Philadelphia. Like he had a bad run of a few years. Like he had a goals against average of 450 for the past 30 games.
And ladies and gentlemen, on that note, never ever piss off Avery again. I mean, you can call him as many names as possible as I've done in the past, but don't ever piss him off because, like I said, the second you start seeing him going off, it is like I said, it is like kicking a puppy off the CN Tower. It is frightening to hear, and I for one never want to hear this side of Avery again unless it pertains to something like this, and I need him to like voice his opinion. But like, folks, given the graphic nature of everything, just someone please buy Avery a frappuccino at Starbucks because he's having a really rough time with this right now.
I mean, you know what? It had to be, it had to be said. And some days, normally, I'm normally, as we all know, jovial, enjoying doing this show, but it's a
Mhm.
topic that, of this nature, it just irks me in terms of how players think they can just brush off this kind of stuff. People, again, like I said, people try to see it as a witch hunt when it's ridiculous. And I just want the sport to be better. I want people to handle this for which there's accountability for people's actions. And I just wish that people who are in this sport move with real honor and class, something that these five players did not do whatsoever.
Yeah, and that's extremely unfortunate in this situation. And sadly, we're gonna have to end off on that note. But of course, before we wrap up things, we're gonna try and end this on a little more positive note. We do have a little bit of a project coming up for you folks. Starting in November, we will officially have our episodes on video. So we will be posting to YouTube very, very shortly. So if you see any of us with like a fresh lineup or a fresh cut, or somebody in a nice, you know, best believe that best believe it is going to be a very interesting situation to see our faces for the first time outside of Instagram and, of course, outside of Twitter as well. So be prepared for that. We also have one other project that we are potentially coming up with. We do want to start live streaming games with you folks. So be prepared to see something within the next coming weeks. We're just working on a little bit of framework before we unveil it to the world. So be prepared. And
Yes.
would like to just genuinely say though, things are about to get real seasoned out in these streets. So that's all I'm gonna say in that matter. Uh,
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Want to say thank you for letting us grace the space between your head top. Of course, we will be back with another episode next week. We want to give a shout out to the Toronto Blue Jays. Hopefully, by the time this recording is posted, they'll be in the World Series. Other than that, Avery, thank you very much for coming through on this episode. And of course, as always, thank you folks for listening. We will be back next week with another episode. Find us wherever you get your podcast from. That's Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, and Podbean. We will potentially be back up on SoundCloud within the next few weeks. We're just looking into that. And of course, you can follow us on the socials at Toronto Third on Blue Sky, Instagram, and on Twitter. So until next time, make sure you drink your water, mind your business, and deuces. Let's go, Blue Jays.